Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here for Leadership Conversations. This is a show where we talk about leadership according to the world that matters to you. Now, I wanted to spend a few moments with you talking about where leadership makes a difference. Now, some people wonder what's the purpose of leadership. They wonder what value do leaders have? What do they do all day? Do they produce widgets? Do they get on the ground floor and work with frontline staff? What do they do? And I've heard that question, and I remember when I was coming to my career, I had that question as well, wondering what leaders did all day. What was their job when you said that you were leader X? And so as I've grown into my own leadership and I've seen just how things have unfolded in my career and the role that I play in my organization and on my team. I totally get it, of course, but then that begs the question of what we're talking about. Right? Where does leadership make a difference? And I think that this could easily become a super long podcast, but I wanted to at least share three quick things with you regarding this topic of where leadership makes a difference. Here's the first thing that I thought about. Leadership makes a difference in decision making. So, if a good leader has democratic practices and tendencies where they want to have most of the team involved in the decision making process, at least having them contribute to the process, share their thoughts, share their insights, etc. And in some cases, it's really healthy to have the team vote to come to a conclusion. But there are many other cases where a vote does not suffice because even if majority rules, the majority decision may not be the best decision in the moment. And for the leaders that are out there, leaders know that there are contexts and just a lot of external things that are unfolding around your team, around your organization, sometimes within your organization, market forces that are pulling and tugging on the market as well as your organization that can complicate decisions. And while based upon information a team may be aware of from their perspective, they are completely unaware of the things that are tugging at them, the things that are tugging at the organization, the things that are tugging at the market, the things that are changing the dynamics by which they will do their job in, let's say, a week, a month, 6 months, etc. And because, team members aren't necessarily aware of those things, this is where a leader comes into play. A leader's job is to be aware of those dynamics that are making it difficult and challenging to do the work at hand. And as a result, there are decisions that have to be made that sometimes to the team isn't popular or doesn't make sense. And I get it. I've been there where decisions were made and I felt like that wasn't the smartest decision because of X, Y, and Z. And, such and such leader or manager doesn't know. They're not here. They don't see what we do. And little did I know at that time when I made those complaints or had those thoughts that my leaders were fighting forces to protect me, to protect my job, to help me do my job better, easier, faster, more efficient. And those forces are very, very real. And it does sometimes result in leaders having to make decisions that, in fact, may be unpopular, but they need to be made. And some of these unpopular decisions would be the antithesis of what the democratic environment would suggest or select. And that can be hard. It's not easy for leaders to let down team members. It's not easy for leaders to withhold information until further information is made available to the team. It's not easy for leaders to make decisions that seem to not make sense. Being a leader can be a lonely experience, and this scenario that I'm describing makes it lonely, where you can't share those burdens. You can't share that information with staff members because it would be inappropriate, and contextually, they wouldn't get it because there's so much that goes into sharing information, right? The longevity of how long we've been struggling with this market force, the complexity of this market force, the role our partners who are supposed to be our friends play in this market force, our competitors, legislation, other environmental factors that remain nameless sometimes. All of that concoction of experiences makes it challenging to include team members along that journey. And so, therefore, the role of a leader, where a leader makes a difference, is in decision making. Here's another thought around where a leader makes a difference is in vision casting. Again, for the same reasons I talked about, the market, the environmental factors that influence business, that influence operations, all of that influences how a leader casts vision and why. Because a leader ideally is looking at the landscape of where the competition is, where our friends are, and where can we strategically move forward to make a significant difference in our line of business, in our bottom line, for our shareholders, for our stakeholders, for our customers. And frontline staff, they are tasked with serving our clients, which is very important and extremely valuable, but they may not see the market from the perspective that the leader does. Now, a good leader always picks the mind, picks the brain of frontline staff, because frontline staff, they are able to capture nuances to the services we provide. They're able to identify ways to do things better, to be more smarter, to be more effective, to be more intimate with our customers. And we need that insight. Leaders need that insight. At the same time, that insight does not position the organization for a strategic move at all times. Therefore, the leader's job is to cast vision, to see perspective at large, and to position the entire organization, not just a team member or a handful of team members or a department, but an entire organization for overall success. And lastly, leaders play a significant role in establishing new normals, okay, setting a cultural tone within an organization. Now, there is the idea that the group can influence culture and influence decisions from the bottom up. The reality is that's the leader's job. And when people kind of make decisions about what they're going to do, whether they're going to go with the group or go with the one who has the power to sign checks, etc., it kind of ends up in the deferred hands of a leader. And this is why this is on this list, right? Leaders establish new normals. They establish culture. They establish behaviors. They establish ways of doing business. They establish morals. They establish standards. That comes from the leader. And it's partly because of the authoritative positioning a leader has in the organization. But beyond that element, the leader who is exposed to the difficulties of keeping an entire business afloat, who's exposed to competition, sometimes fair and unfair, who's exposed to the legislative challenges associated with doing business, has to cast a vision, make decisions, but also establish new normals that will position the organization to execute a culture, a moral standard, a way of doing business on a consistent basis. And the way that's done is establishing new normals, setting a cultural tone, setting a cultural expectation. In many cases, a leader may have to walk the walk, show the example. And then in other cases, a leader may have to set the tone in word and hold people accountable for what's been shared or passed down. At the end of the day, this whole podcast show is dedicated to leaders and the importance of leaders and the difference leaders make. And as you who's listening to this podcast, consider taking on a leadership role, whether it's in your organization or in a volunteer group that you're part of. Maybe it's in your faith-based organization. Maybe it's with your kid's soccer team. Doesn't matter. Wherever you're exploring taking on a leadership role, know that the role of a leader makes a difference in the life of customers, in a life of organizational life, in a life of our partners and our stakeholders. And it makes a difference in the survival of an organization. You are needed. And for those leaders who are already working in a leadership capacity and you're feeling discouraged, you're feeling like you're tired and there's no one to help, there's nothing to help, and you're overwhelmed, I want you to listen to this podcast again, and I want you to know that you are important and you make a difference. It's not easy. It may not come natural to you, but it's important for you. It's important for your organization to get better as a leader, to be the best leader you can be, to be the most healthiest leader you can be, to be the most solid, the most sane, the most wise leader you can be. because your organization will benefit from it. Your team will benefit from it. Your customers will benefit from it. This is Dr. William Clark here for Leadership Conversations, and I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you during the next show.